Well, good morning, everybody. As you look at this image of Hurricane Erin, which I'm pretty sure will be upgraded to a hurricane very, very soon after I record this, I just want to give you a quick update of what we're going to talk about today. After we get through the latest updates on Erin and its potential for hitting the eastern United States, I'm going to walk you through the near-term temperature and precipitation pattern, just because we're continuing to see some flash drought expand in certain places. And it's getting pretty hot, but it's not going to stick around for too long based on some of the new model evidence. All right, after that, I'm going to talk to you about where I think this late August, September pattern could be going, what might be driving it. And I'm going to show you some correlations with the developing La Niña and what its possible influences are going to be. And I'm going to tell you, don't apply these, if you don't mind me telling you. I don't think that this La Niña has the flavor of a typical La Niña. So we'll get to that at the very end. All right, so there's Erin. It's kind of neat to look at this. You can see a couple of neat things. There is some Saharan dust here, as you can tell. There's some sun glint. That's just basically where you have the greatest reflection angle from the sun off the ocean surface hitting the satellite. This is going to continue to work its way south as we approach the equinox. And on, September 21st, it'll be right on the equator. This is smoke, and some of this smoke here is from the Canadian wildfires. Some of that's from the western U.S. wildfires, but Hurricane Erin's looking pretty robust. We were just watching some satellite data this morning. This is what we call the mesoscale floater. The GOES-19 will be trained on a specific area and collect an image every minute, and Erin's got some pretty healthy convection. We need to watch Erin come into some better symmetry, and as it does so, as it moves over some warmer water with much reduced wind shear. This thing is, I think, going to take off pretty quickly up to a major hurricane. So that will likely happen this weekend. So the latest update early this morning, still a tropical storm, but we expect later today for this to be upgraded to a Cat 1 hurricane. It may be going through that right now. And we do expect, as you just watch here, that throughout the weekend into early next week to be major hurricane up to a Cat 4 is what the current model projection on the strength is. I just want to make a point. We are watching another system, Invest 98L, that while I don't anticipate any sort of rapid intensification, this is going to be a rainmaker down here for this part of Texas. We'll look at that one closely in just a few moments as well. But here's the tracks, and this is the latest evidence. Now, what Tomerberg does on his site is he blends together the European ensemble, the GFS ensemble, and the CMC model. And so we're looking at all of those tracks, and this also includes the UK Met in there as well as a blue line. And as we just play this out, we're 5 days out in the forecast, so it's still 5 days from now. It's going to be somewhere near the Bahamas between there and Bermuda, and then we'll watch this system based on best model evidence we have right now, still have a very low probability of hitting the U.S. East Coast. Now, there are, as we all know, and as Matt explained yesterday when we looked at Hurricane Florence, there are still potential, spots for error with this, and it's going to depend a lot on the pressure systems that surround Erin, not necessarily Erin itself. Hurricanes basically follow the hottest oceans and the weakest winds. They just want to steer themselves into low wind shear environments with tons of heat coming off the ocean, but they are pushed around by high and low pressure systems, but generally high pressure systems, given that we're in the subtropics. They're generally pushed around by those like the Bermuda High. So that's the narrative. And I'll be honest with you, I do put a lot of trust in these forecast models. And so I go looking for ways by which to understand why the models are so tightly clustered around the potential track here, and then try to assess what it would take to shove this thing farther to the west. Now, real quick, I do want to point out that as we look at the potential forecast tracks of Invest 98L, while not expecting it to intensify, bringing moisture into southern Texas, maybe along the Rio Grande down here, is a possibility, but we'll take a look at just how much here in a few moments. If we get back to Erin, though, this is the forecast on the 20th, so August 20th. We're looking out there into next week. And the near surface winds, this is a monstrous hurricane, huge system here. But to understand the steering currents, we got to step up a little bit in the atmosphere. So at 850, this would be about a mile above our heads. We can now see the much more influential high pressure cell that's just to Erin's, east. If you took this high pressure cell and put it there, we would just keep nudging Erin closer and closer to the U.S. East Coast. Up a little bit higher, this is now 700 millibars. This is interesting. There's some upper level flow coming in this direction, right? And you can kind of think of that flow as being a mid-level kind of protective shield against the East Coast. If that is not there by the time we get 5 days from now, then that is going to be a very influential factor on if Erin continues to press farther and farther to the west. But you can still see it. Look at the upper level. This is 500 millibars, about 3.5 miles above the surface, halfway through the thickness of the atmosphere. And there's that large high that's just to Erin's east. This is what's helping to give us a stronger push on Erin's east side to the north, which will eventually catch it up with these winds here and just pull it out to open ocean, where it is expected to develop deeply into a synoptic scale system up here in the North Atlantic and move on off toward Europe. But as I look at it, those steering currents deep in the atmosphere, there is still an avenue, an opportunity to inch its way closer to the East Coast. In other words, there is no sizable feature that is going to push Erin out. So I'm not going to make the call on this just yet. While evidence suggests it's going to stay out to open ocean, just understand it takes just the loss of some mid-level flow like this or the repositioning of that high. Maybe it's a bit more here to just nudge Erin closer to the East Coast. So while you could assess today that the threat is low for the East Coast, I think we need to be paying attention to a few of these factors as we go through the weekend. Now, a couple things to take note of. There's going to be incredibly rough seas in this area, which will it'll disrupt some shipping routes. And I imagine we're going to have to change some flight plans around Erin, which is very common. But just wanted to kind of point that out to you this morning. Okay, let's go to the West Coast. Just looking at some water vapor imagery. This is, I'll be honest with you. If I didn't see all of this, which this is amazing, we have lately had some monsoonal moisture getting into Arizona, New Mexico, and the Four Corners states. If I didn't see that, and you just showed me this, I'm like, hey, look at that. It's winter, and we're pushing in a deep low into British Columbia. And so this is the first meaningful shove of moisture I think I've seen in a while getting into parts of the Pacific Northwest. Now, mainly parts of Washington, but that's been an area that's been quite dry for some time. I've been just kind of looking at all of the maps on AgWeather, and we are about to release a new design of AgWeather. I know I mentioned that a lot, but it just takes us a long time to get that coding work done so that it works across multiple platforms and we can introduce some new products to you, but we're working on it. And you can see all of the models all stacked up here with my old color bar system. And what I'm pointing at, I'll just bring up just open this one up in a new tab here, is that we do start to take note of the above average precipitation here. Now, we've seen wildfires showing up here. This is going to be bringing in some wind and rain, and it's going to be very good to see that. There is that surge of monsoonal moisture as well. Matt talked about it. I've been very skeptical about this for weeks because of the placement of the upper level ridge. I think it's not the most ideal spot to get that moisture into place, but there is still more. We're going to watch a lot of this Midwest, upper Midwest to continue to get more rain. And the Southeast, while it backs off a little bit on precip, mainly because Erin's focus is out here and there's going to be higher pressure moving in, this corridor here has me concerned. And it goes all the way into the Northeast of how dry things could possibly be. Again, that's Texas to the Mid-South and to parts of the Northeast. Now, why I'm concerned about it is the newest Drought monitor was released, and they actually went through an upgrade here. So now we're in that first classification of drought. And I'm a little surprised when I look at this map, though, at how much of the Northeast is not currently in drought, given how dry it's been. They did also change a little bit here in parts of Illinois, my home state. You can see that pocket there of degradation also in Indiana. But this is the area that we know has been going over drier as of late, and we just need to continue to monitor that because the start of this new month, that is the first 14 days of August. So more places drier, of course, than wetter. And I think it's important to note that in terms of the start of a new month, this is why I've been kind of so reluctant to make the call on the southwest monsoon. I mean, it's the first 14 days of August. That is when we should get big monsoonal moisture. And you can see here that, some of these numbers are in not just the driest, but not just dry, but the driest in 133 years. And then you get here, a commenter a couple days ago was in West Virginia saying, look, we have now had multiple late summer fall droughts back to back to back to back. And I can definitely see the desperation for getting rain into this part of the country. So I want to just point those statistics out to you. All right, another way to look at this is to kind of look at the departure from normal. And just to take note here, we've got, a 1.5 to up to 3 inch deficit here recently. This is the last 30 days, while there's been a corridor just to the north and west of it that's 3 to 4 to 6 inches above average. We did have major flooding recently down here in parts of Georgia, northern South Carolina, and there was a major area of flooding earlier this week in Chattanooga. You probably saw that on the national news. It's not going to show up in this 30-day map as clearly, especially because I'm zoomed out here, but I wanted to highlight these drought regions just so we could continue to monitor them carefully. All right, I did want to go to Memphis. All right, I just picked out Memphis right here in this really dry spot, and it's amazing just to think that, for Memphis, on the year, okay, we're at, so stop where the blue is here, it's 45.9 inches, and average is down here around 33. So this is a significant increase, but this is how drought works. That little area right into there, given the speed of the hydrologic cycle, says, well, I know that we had all this excess moisture early, but it's gone, right? I mean, it's not like it just stays there. And when you get just days strung together of heat, you evaporate a lot of it. And we can see this. Now, this tool will be available very soon. This is my prototype, and I'm gonna make it a lot prettier for all of you. But here's the thing I'm thinking about. When you look at year-to-date precip minus evaporation, just in Memphis, I mean, look, this is surplus, so this would be deficit down here, but it's just building. But if you were to start this just back at the end of June, you'd start off at 14 inches and you'd be down here now around 6, which means there's kind of an 8-inch drop in total moisture when you consider the evaporative process. Does that make sense? So that's concerning. And if I slide up to the top here, I'm going to do this pretty quickly. This is where the next 7 days are going according to NOAA's forecast model. So this is their forecast model information. Look at that. That's a lot of heat coming into this part of the Mid-South. So we're going to have to watch that pretty carefully. So where's the rain going to be? Well, this is the next 7 days according to the European Ensemble, right? So there it is. There's something there. But there's this corridor we've been keeping an eye on over the next week that there will be some precipitation in here, but it is drier than average. Erin sliding through, higher pressure building into the southeast, a corridor of wetter weather running over the northern side of it, better rains in parts of the Canadian prairie, and then the system I just showed you a moment ago coming into the northwest. That's the next 7 days. This is the next 10, okay? This is solely looking at week 2, and I've got some things I'd like to say about this in a few minutes here. So better storms in the southeast, better storms coming in here in week 2. You'll see why. There's a ridge building in, but this little corridor, I shouldn't say little, it's expansive, it's massive, showing up drier during that time period. So you stitch it all together and say, show me 14 days, and this is what the newest European ensemble looks like, all right? Okay, now, the upper level pattern will dictate this. So as we play it through this weekend, look at the size of that trough associated with that push of moisture coming into this region. Expansive ridge here, heat that's coming through. That's by Monday. Getting into Tuesday, Wednesday, you can see the ensemble's kind of forecast of Erin, and it is just important to note that those ensemble members are dragging, a few of them, closer to the Carolina coast, most of them out to open ocean before it gets absorbed into this deep low. But we will see by next Thursday, a expansive high here. Now, will we get moisture underneath this into Arizona and Southern California, or is it going to be here? And do we bring in moisture to Northern California out of these troughs that continue to develop? That's going to be a big question moving forward. But what's interesting is by next week in the 23rd, 24th, 25th, what do we go back to? The models want to give us that look. And I'm going to show you what this is doing to the temperature pattern out there in just a few moments. But as you get later into August, this tends to result in much less northwest flow thunderstorms and starts to result in northwest flow drier. Does that make sense? Because sometimes during summer, northwest flow, big storms. The rest of the year, no, it's the wrong signal. So let's get into it. 6 o'clock this morning, this is the all hazards weather map, just showing you the expansive area from Florida all the way to Nebraska of heat advisories that are in place. If we take a look at where the current temperatures are at 6 a.m. as I started recording, St. Louis 78 in the overnight, Omaha 75. And I went looking just back at since mid-June, how warm these nights have been. Now, if you remember, I showed you this earlier, 2010, the heat was much more expansive in the overnight across a broader area. This year it's been concentrated in a few areas here with these hot overnight lows even getting into the northeast. Indiana and Ohio have taken kind of the brunt of this, so is Kentucky, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania. And next week I'm going to go to Indiana a few times, do some yield checks as a part of a big event Nutrien's putting on there. And I'm pretty excited to get to speak at it, but also at the same time, I'm looking forward to walking through some fields over here to see just if, this eastern part of the Corn Belt has seen some yield loss due to these long duration hot nights that have been in this area. Okay, from there, I do want to get back into the precip though. Next 3 days, we're going to watch day 1 today. That's Saturday and Sunday. You can kind of see this similar corridor setting up pretty far to the north around the heat that's building in, where we have not only the risk of storms, especially today in Minnesota, Wisconsin, but then you see the risk of excessive rainfall. And that has been a spot that's been quite wet, as we just analyzed a few moments ago. This morning on the radar, just to show you from late last night through this morning, we did have storms that moved through that same corridor. You saw look at that. Look at the surge of some moisture down here in Arizona. I love seeing this, given how much I really didn't buy into any sort of model forecast to rain in Arizona. But that seems to be where we're lining things up for today. So just watch it. There's this morning. Okay, watch the high-res NAM play this forward again this afternoon. More of a monsoonal surge. Low comes into kind of the Puget Sound area up towards British Columbia. Tonight we're going to be watching for showers and storms to roll through, this area. Scattered convection, scattered storms in the southeast on the heat. This is getting into the overnight hours. Now working our way into early morning Saturday. The models, I don't know that they have the timing on this right. That's a very challenging thing, but at some point over the next 30 hours, I would just say I want to be very aware of the risk of stronger storms in this area. And I really don't think the models have the timing on it, but we'll keep an eye on it. Saturday again, okay, that low moves through. The front comes into parts of Oregon. They need that rain. And then you just see more monsoonal-like mountain thunderstorms here as the bigger storms roll through parts of the upper Midwest. Now, how that front sags on Sunday will be interesting. Right in through here. I'd love it if it could break farther down into the eastern Corn Belt overall, but I just wanted to give you an update on what the high-res models are saying. Bigger picture, this is the new European solution on this forecast. Let's just play it out there. Ready? Getting through the weekend, that's where we arrive. That's through Monday morning. So that's our greatest corridor of heavier rain. There's your monsoonal storms, just scattered isolated storms here. And there's that dry corridor. See it? Now, as we play this forward, this goes through the rest of the week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. There's Erin, according to the European model. Holy smokes. Up to a foot of rain coming out of Erin over here. And as we get ourselves into the next weekend, we start to see, as the ridge shows up here, look at this, some storm activity happening there. More of this region filling in, which I'll tell you, you just saw it. This area needs to get some rain. But there is still this, through the next 10 days, a drier corridor here. And that's not to ignore other places. I'm just keeping an eye on where that drought monitor changed the most. So I went and looked at this morning, the 0Z run to say, who has the highest probability of staying below 1/10 of an inch. And we can start to link it up, right? So there's, again, off the East Coast. Even though you see this part of Colorado, Kansas drier, I have been watching storms come off the Front Range. That's the same thing that's going up here into parts of Montana. And this model is not going to be able to resolve that very well. But if I flip this over, probably got a new model running. Oh, I have to sign in. Apparently I signed out. I'll just do that later. Sorry. Let's just get into to seeing what the models on my weather forecast page show. So this would be the day 8 through 14. And I want to point out that it's not just the European model that was predicting this week 2 precip. See it in the AI. You can also see it here in the in the GFS. And the AI model, boy, if we miss these rains in this area, that week 2 is still dry in the AI as well. So I just want to point out that after what has been an incredibly wet summer in Iowa, kind of the epicenter of the wet, they're now getting a little bit of a drier forecast. Now, if I could wish cast my way into making this happen, I would. This is critical for the winter wheat crop that will get planted, just to get, I've been told that you want to get the rain now to get the weeds to grow, and that way they don't come up when you plant your wheat later. So just interesting to learn about that in this area. Okay, let's get over to temperatures. It is scorching hot in the midsection of the country, still cooler in the west overall. As we play it forward by Saturday, a lot of heat moving in through here. My son starts soccer this week. In fact, that's his birthday. He'll be 13 years old on Saturday the 16th. We're going over to Decatur, Illinois to play some soccer, and it's going to be brutally hot, so hope the boys stay hydrated. Sunday's a hot one. Monday's a hot one here. And Tuesday, look at that. There's some heat coming through. Now, by the time we get out to Wednesday next week, there could be storms in this area. Matt talked about it yesterday. I just showed it to you. Want to keep an eye on that. The East Coast gets a little bit of a break, but we're just going to watch one important thing happen in the models. Ready? The ensembles are washing it out. This is the next 5 days. All right, there's the heat here. The cooler west, that was well forecast. By day 5 through 10, as the ridge opens, what I want to know is, does this area cool down? Now, the GFS and the European don't really cool it down significantly. Keep all the cooler weather in the Canadian Maritimes. Keep the heat on here. But take a look at the AI model. Let's go here. This is the new AI forecast. That next 5 days makes sense to us, right? That's day 5 through 10, very similar. Now watch day 10 through 15 in the European artificial intelligence. Bringing in a big shot of cooler and drier air here and pushing all this heat back up into the western side of Canada. And I want to watch this carefully because of the amplitude of the trough ridge pattern the AI model is sniffing out here. And there are some parts of this that make some sense to me. And I'm going to make a case for that here in the next few moments. I do want to show you one thing, though. Another thing you're going to be able to get, you'll be able to drop a pin anywhere you want and see the forecast and all of the data. It's going to look differently than this. This is just my test bed. But you can come up here and type in a location. So let's go, because there was quite a bit of colder air coming into Minneapolis. So I just started typing it in, and there it is, Minneapolis, Minnesota. So it dropped the pin there, and I want to show you, look at this rain coming in. Whew, that's nice. I want to show you this. There's temperatures. Now look, the AI model, okay, which is in this shading, this is every 6 hours, by not this next Sunday, Monday, but next Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, it's actually dropping overnight lows below 50. Look at that. So there is some cooler air, and I just want to show you why the models are so different. There's the AI, there is the GFS. So that's a 20-degree spread in temperatures between two models, and it all has to do with the placement of the ridge. That always happens out at this time scale, but I thought you might want to just see that here. Okay, on to bigger picture things. The new extended European model from the 18th of August to the 18th of September. The top thing that I saw was it went less dry in this area. It continues to want to show some sort of development of a tropical system that we need to be paying attention to here. Just tropical convection. It's got better monsoonal moisture. It's got better moisture through the Canadian prairie. The European model backed off on dry through mid-September across a big section of the United States. The GFS, not so much. In fact, along the Gulf Coast, it is very dry, while it's got more of that Bay of Campeche signal of something developing. Notice how much drier it is in a few of these other corridors, including places that are dry right now. Do you trust any of them? No. I haven't been trusting these subseasonal models or the seasonal models since they broke down back in, May. And so we're just looking at them because they're a source of information, but I want to put, a caveat on this at very low confidence. What I do know is that over the next, 6 weeks, there seems to be a bias toward keeping the MJO somewhere from phase 3 to 4 to 5. And the models have been hinting at that for a while. And why this is important is late August or at least September 3, 4, 5, it's a Gulf of Alaska trough setup. And that's what we typically get. So this just means more warmth in this area. And the question will be, does the Bermuda High still pump moisture into it? The other big wild card at the end of August into September is the tropical systems. What do they do? So we're just going to assess it and watch it. I will say this, if we are wrong and it flips over to phase 6, then it's a Gulf of Alaska ridge. And we'll talk about flow coming out of the southwest and kind of a spark of a second part of the severe weather season. So I think a lot's going to ride on the MJO and its position, phase 3 versus phase 6 as an example. Okay, so what are the bigger picture things that I have all these last slides to talk about? It's going to be about La Niña. We are in the middle of a month. We've seen some of the new model data. Is there really a La Niña signal in here to talk about? So I've been paying attention to the trade winds. And since mid-July, these blues that show up represent stronger than average trade winds out of the east. And the forecast is still aggressive on that. So you're saying, what is a La Niña? La Niña is just trade winds, sped up. That's it. They go from east to west across the equator, especially in the Pacific. They do it in the Atlantic as well. And the forecast, every time you see blues here, reds there, that's La Niña-esque in the pattern. So if I show you what the ocean temperatures are doing right now, we're getting that. We're getting some upwelling of cold water in here. And we have questions about the strength of this La Niña going forward. Now, Matt and I are still working on an explanation for you, especially as we approach the winter months, on this persistent warmth in the North Pacific Ocean. But if this La Niña is a dominant driver going forward, which some of the forecast models suggest it is, then we're going to have to use that as a piece of the forecast going into fall. So if you look at the ocean temperatures there, they're already down to minus 0.6, and that drop is already technically in. We look at minus 0.5, by the way. So we're La Niña-esque right now. Okay, what did the new CPC update say? It says through October, November, December, even actually through winter, the highest probability of the state of the Pacific Ocean is La Niña. But I want to be very cautious about this, okay? Every La Niña has a different flavor. And the flavor that this winter's La Niña is going to have, or this fall's La Niña is going to have, we have no idea. We just don't. You don't know it until it sets up. But I am just looking for a few things. So if you look from South America over toward Indonesia and Australia, this is the Pacific Ocean at the top. This is depth. There is some colder water. Watch it again here. This is going back to June. There's colder water that's beginning to emerge. In other words, this isn't just a superficial feature happening right now. Those trade winds are showing colder water beneath the surface upwelling. And I mean colder, not cold, but it's colder than average. So what I want to know is, well, what does that mean? So let's look historically at the correlation between ENSO, which is El Nino and La Nina, to temperatures. So when you correlate them, El Ninos tend to make this very, very warm, and El Ninos tend to make September, October, November cooler here, okay? But we don't have an El Nino. We have a La Nina, so you need to reverse the colors in your head. That means this region tends to be warmer overall in fall. Remember Monday? We know that there's a long-standing trend toward warmer for the continental United States in fall. Going beyond that, what about December, January, February? Now again, you got to flip the colors in your head. We tend to be more mild across the southern tier of the United States. We tend to be wetter, we tend to be cooler across the northern tier. Now, do you remember that? Mild here, even though it's blue, mild and colder. We tend to split the country north-south. Warm, cold, got it? Now, I bring that up because in a moment, I'm going to show you what happened last winter with a weak La Nina. So you remember this, all right? Let's get into precip. Now the colors, I think, are a little bit easier to understand because when we look at these correlation coefficients, these at least are drier colors. So what do we tend to see September, October, November? Wetter northwest, drier southwest, mixed signals central U.S. But overall, there's not a strong wet signal in the Mississippi Basin, Ohio Basin, southeast, northeast. Okay, there's a wetter signal here. We'll come back to that in a moment. What about winter? December, January, February. What we tend to see is drier south, drier possibly in the Central Plains, very wet northwest, northern Rockies, and there tends to be a signal for stronger storms to develop in the Mississippi, Ohio, and Ohio valleys, and then the Great Lake Basin. All right. Now, last winter, we had a weak La Nina. There was the triple dip one. This is the weak one. Last fall started off September and October, record dry here, record dry northeast, record dry southwest, and then a couple of hurricanes, Milton and Helene, that did all of this. Then we flipped over to November. In November, with a developing La Nina, where it should be, but historically correlates to drier, came in super wet. That's what I mean. Every La Nina has a different flavor. And I've never heard so many growers in this part of the country so happy with November rains. Then if you remember, we got into winter, And winter got brutally cold all the way down to the Gulf Coast. We saw the epic snowfall event that stretched through here. You're going, wait a minute, didn't you say the historical correlations are warmer south, colder north? Yeah, I did. But last winter, that was the flavor of this La Niña. So what do I know about, this La Niña that's upcoming? Nothing yet. We just don't. We know that the guidance is weak on its strength. So please just don't hear a forecast, be it from the Farmer's Almanac, which was just released. I saw that one. Or just some random person on Facebook that says, this is exactly how winter's going to be. We don't know. So I'll just say this. I have something to be cautious about, and that is going to be the September, October, November forecast for South America. Last September, October, November was driest in the Amazon. We saw near normal to above normal precipitation here. That's critical for the pace of planting. All of the models right now are wetter in this region, September, October, November for this year. Again, you're looking at last year's map. What will be very important for us to assess is, does this year's La Niña go drier here and drier into Argentina, which is historically the correlation? Or will this be, again, another one of those years where the South American subtropical high, which sets up here, feeds the monsoon early? That's what we'll be watching. I'll talk more about it as we get into this late summer, early fall time period. But with that, I'm going to stop it here. Hope you all have a good rest of your week and weekend. Be safe. Stay out of the heat if you're in the midsection of the country if you can. We'll just talk next week. Thanks.